My name is Kandace. I'm a children's author and I specialize in writing books about Black history for children. And I've been doing this for about, 12 or 13 years. I don't work in the publishing industry. I didn't work in the history or any historical society or anything like that. It was just a hobby and something that I felt I could do in my spare time around my work. So a hobby, but also something that I could see was really needed, because when I was looking at books 13 years ago, I realized that there was just not this big gap. This information just wasn't being put into books for children. And I knew that there was the information available because I saw lots of Black history in museums, in archives. So I knew it was there, but I just couldn't understand why there was this gap and it wasn't coming into the children's books. And that's when I started. I started out self-publishing, and I did that until about a couple of years ago, summer 2020. And then I decided that it was too much trying to do research, writing, publishing, marketing, invoicing, lugging the books down the stairs, posting them. It was just so much. So I decided to go with the mainstream traditional publisher, go the traditional route, and stop self-publishing and just concentrate on doing the research and the writing and have a big publisher help with all the rest and do all the rest. And that's what I've been doing. So have I answered all?
Yeah. I mean, you're right. We get a lot of questions about, on a side note, like self-publishing and publishing, and it's a big commitment. You have to do everything or outsource it. So yeah, I totally understand. And I mean, I'm going to get straight into a reason why we're here today, and that is this beautiful book. And I have a copy here, the story of Afro Hair, 5,000 years of history, fashion, and styles. And this is, as you say, under Scholastic, I believe. And yes. That's what we're here partially to talk about today, this beautiful book. So I'm going to start off with a question that you've like half already answered, and it's almost got a very obvious answer, but I think it's an important one to ask. And it's simply, why did you write this book?
Yes. So it has some things in common with all the books I've done, and then some things specific to this book. So all the books I write, I always want to write books that are filling a gap. All my books that I've done, self-published, the last one published by Scholastic and the next one's coming, all for me have to be about things that no one else has really covered or haven't covered it in the way I think it should be covered, so that people reading the book will find out more, find out things they didn't know, find out more. I always try to write my books not to be like the definitive book, like to say, right, you've read that book, now you know everything, but more to help people to find out more themselves, to show areas where we can research more, to show areas where we're missing the gaps. So that's part of the reason for doing it, like all my books. This one specifically was one that I've been thinking about for many years, because I did a book years ago, 2013, a self-published book called Secrets of the Afro Comb. And it was part of an exhibition at the Fitzwilliam Museum in Cambridge. And it was about African combs from ancient Egypt right up to the modern Black Fist comb. And people loved it. And they loved it because obviously the comb is an object. It's a tool for combing hair, but people also loved it because it was about hair as well, a little bit. So I had the idea for a long time that it would be good to also have a book like specifically about the hair. So that was part of it. And then I would say, so it has always been in the back of my mind, but then I would also say maybe the last few years, I started to notice more and more stories still happening in this day and age about children being excluded from school because of wearing their natural Afro hair. Not just schools, sometimes even, I don't know, workplaces and things like that as well. Obviously adults, not children, but I'm specifically thinking about the children. And I just thought, well, there's just too much ignorance about the nature of Afro Hair. So that kind of made me think as well. So the book is mostly history, but it also has in a bit in the beginning about the biology of the hair as well, and explaining why this hair type goes up and out first rather than down. So I wanted to put that in as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I've had a look through the book, and it's like, I mean, it looks small at first, but it's mighty, like it's powerful, and it really, really tells a journey, and it's so informative, and there's so much information, and it's so, I don't want to say simply put forward, but it's just so well explained that it leaves little questions like, and one thing that I actually really picked up that I really liked about it was that it's obviously for a younger audience, and it explains a lot in there. As you say, there's at the start, it explains more like to the biology of it and the cells in the skull and like in the skin around on the head. And it's, you go into that, but then you go into, I was reading about the record store in Tottenham, and what was weird to me was like explaining how music used to be on records. And but it's so in depth and explains everything. But then what caught my eye was at the back, there is a reference page and a further reading page, and it's almost like, I don't want to say like an essay because that term puts people off, but it's very like together in its sense of like, yeah, it almost brings the little people into the big world. And I think it's such a professional way of doing it, and it doesn't drag them up, it doesn't make it too complicated, and it really covers all bases from, as it said, 5,000 years ago to, through ancient Egypt, through more recently like the Windrush generation, and today, as you say, with things that have been going on with this exclusion still happening because of the hairstyles. It just covers everything, and it's great. And what it does as well is, I don't have one picked out, but like, it's funky. So the next question is the illustrations. Of course, that wasn't you. That was Joel Avellino. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. And it just makes the book, the collaboration between your storytelling, the information that's being given in such a clear and concise way with these like incredible illustrations, just makes this book formidable. Can you tell me about that collaboration and what it was like working together on something like this?
Yeah. So I'm going to tell you about that. But before I tell you about that, I want to just say two things about what you said. So first of all, you say you don't want to say that the book is simply, as if that was, maybe for some people that would be offensive. But for me, that's actually a compliment, because that's actually what I am trying to do. I don't want anyone to ever think like the book is something like a War and Peace, even though it can fit. I want it to be simple. And if people say, oh, it seems really simple, I'm actually pleased about that, because I feel then that children will read it. So for me, that was actually a compliment. And with the further reading page, I mean, there is actually a lot that I couldn't get into the book because there's so much more. And so when we were looking at space, but I really feel it's important to have that, because like I said, I want people to read this book and find things that they think are interesting, and then go and do further research and learn more about it. And maybe other books can come out about it as well. So I'm really glad that you appreciated that page, because I feel it's really important to show the sources. And for someone who writes nonfiction as well, I like to know the sources that have been used in a book, because there's facts and then there's also the interpretation of the facts. And someone can go back and read that again and say, okay, so Kandace did get that right. She got that right. Okay, those facts are right, but I don't agree with the interpretation. So it is actually really, really important. So about the illustrations, this was very, very new for me, because in the past, when I self-published, I obviously did everything, not the illustrations, obviously, but I dealt direct with the artists. And this is the second book in the series of 5 that I've signed the deal with Scholastic. And the first book was a reprint of the story of the Windrush. So that one, they used the same illustrations that I'd already done. So it was a republished book. So this is actually the first time I've worked on a book where I wasn't in charge of dealing direct with the illustrator. And when you've been so much in control in the past, and it was a very nerve-wracking experience. I was thinking, oh, I hope the illustrations will be good. So the publishers, they do show you the illustrator that they're going to use. And they did show me the front cover, which I immediately loved. And I said, yeah, I'm happy. And then that was it. I didn't really hear much
Okay.
until it was like, okay, we're going to be going to print soon. Here are the illustrations. And luckily, they, luckily I really love them. And they've really added to the book. And
Yeah.
people, yeah. So, and so for me, that's really good because, especially, you were saying earlier about being self-published
Mhm.
and the difference between self-publishing and traditional publishing. And for me, this has shown one of the benefits and made me feel quite pleased about the decision I made.
Mhm.
Because now that's one thing that I don't need to do or worry about. Because it seems to be in really good hands.
I
I
mean,
only met the illustrator after the book was published.
well, I mean, yeah, it's how it works as well, especially, in recent times with the move to digital as well. I suppose it's seen as less necessary. So yeah, I mean, it's kind of crazy to think that someone's working on your book that you've not actually seen, but also the job that they've done is phenomenal. Like, it brings the book to life, and it is a children's book still, as informative and that it's still a children's book, and it really just makes it so engaging in the visual aspect as well. It stands out. You see, if you used to see this, that it just is so eye-catching. I agree, it's great. And then this book is one that we featured in our Lit in Colour research, the Young Writers Lit in Colour research. So to anyone that hasn't checked that out yet, to anyone that doesn't know what it's about, a quick sort of backstory is that back in 2021, I think around the middle of the year, I can't remember specifically, Penguin Books did research that they came out and published as Lit in Colour, and it was to do with the representation of Black and minority ethnic authors represented in the English literature GCSE curriculum. And if I remember off the top of my head correctly, it was something around, I think it was 16% of students identify as Black or minority ethnic. However, less than 1% of authors represented in the curriculum are identify, and less than 0.1% are female, Black or minority ethnic. So we as at Young Writers did a piece into the representation in children's books, and exactly what you've talked about, just before, about how the characters oftentimes, in picture books and stuff, aren't represented as diversely as they should be. And it is something that is increasing, which is fantastic, but it's still not at the level that it should be, quite honestly. And, at Young Writers, we have a responsibility to play a part in that. And so we went out to 7 authors, including yourself, and asked the seemingly simple question: why is diversity in literature important? And the question, to me, I chose it, was important to us because, yes, it's an obvious answer, but it's more to do with the personal interpretation. And, it's a relatively open one where everyone could put in their own thoughts and their own reasoning and their own stories behind it. So it had to be relatively open. And so that's that in a nutshell. So do head to our blog and please do read it, because it's a great piece and it's really informative, and it's based on the Penguin research. It's based on the CLP Reflecting Realities research. So it's much more fun than I've just described it as, I promise. But you took part in that and you answered that question. So I would like to kind of pose the question to yourself again and for you to go into. So why is diversity in literature or children's literature important?
So I think it's important for the reasons that most people are saying, which is obviously for the child seeing themselves represented, and whatever that representation is, that's really important. I think people understand that. But I also think on the other side of it, it's important for children who aren't like that to read about people who are different, because we live in a world that's very diverse. It's always actually been diverse, really. But, I don't, for example, one of my favorite books is The Handmaid's Tale. That's not by a Black author. It's not about Black people, but I still really can enjoy and appreciate the book. It makes, when you read a book that is maybe even outside of your experience or outside of what you know, it can take you to worlds and to perspectives that you wouldn't think about. So I think there's also that side why it's important. And I think it's important. I mean, you obviously don't have Afro hair. You've got great hair. I love it, but it's not Afro hair. And it hasn't stopped you from reading the book
Yeah,
or
absolutely.
appreciating the book or think, you know. So yes, I think the representation side of it, which we're talking about at the moment, and how it affects the children themselves, not seeing themselves in the book. Of course, that's really important. But it's also important to let children read about other people as well, particularly other people that may be around them that they're going to interact with in life, you know? So a book like The Story of Afro Hair, some of the core readership will obviously be children that have Afro hair, of course, and even some adults. But they're also going to be children who are reading the book who don't have Afro hair and are still interested in the book as well. So I think, yes, it's about different perspectives, exposing children to different perspectives and helping them to understand the world and the world even beyond their own experiences as well.
Absolutely. I mean, on a personal note, when one of the reasons that I love books and reading is because it gives you the opportunity to learn so much about the world and other perspectives that you might not be able to necessarily directly learn. You could have a really strong interest in Afro hair, for example, but you might not know anyone with Afro hair. And so you don't have that first-hand example. You don't have that friend. You don't have that person in class. You don't have that person in your workplace that that you're used to it. And so books are a really fantastic way to expand your horizons. You can read about something that's going on in South America and you're not in South America. It's just that the best ways to expand your horizons. And having a book like this in a school library, for example, not only does it help teach the class that doesn't necessarily identify with this, not the readership, but doesn't have Afro hair, for example, it not only helps them be educated on the subject, but it also means that if there is a student there that does have Afro hair and they don't feel represented, having that in their library puts them in the same position as everyone else in their class. And maybe not the same position because they're still probably underrepresented in, picture books or novels or whatnot. But, when we talk about Afro hair, this could be any manner of things, this could be anything. And it applies to all of those aspects. And one thing that I mentioned to you before we actually got started was that what this book has done, in my opinion, from looking on socials, I mean, I saw you on the radio about this book, is that it has started a conversation, a very wide conversation. And it seems that this isn't just a children's book. This is a piece of, I don't want to say history. I don't want to I don't want to jinx it almost, but it started a conversation, and sometimes they're the most important books that exist, and it's left a legacy, and hopefully it will continue to do so, and people will pick up this book and read it, and that must feel like amazing.
It does. I mean, like I said, it was a book I wanted to write for a long time. And then I said yes to Scholastic, I'm going to do this one. And then I started it. And I have to be honest, when I first started it, I thought, oh, maybe I shouldn't have said I wanted to do it, because the topic was a lot more vast than I thought. Even when I started writing it, I kind of had an idea of where I thought the book would go, what I'd put in. But once I started, because obviously I had some research from before when I worked on the exhibition, but when I started to go deeper, I realized that the whole topic, even for me, there's so much I haven't put in the book as well. So even just having conversations about each individual chapter in itself, there's so much more we can discuss on, it's a vast subject. Yeah, it is.
Definitely. Well, that's it. Like, as I say, the book charts over 5,000 years of history, and you have chapters in there from ancient Egyptians to Windrush, and each of these things are huge topics. I mean, especially Windrush being the biggest example. As you say, you literally made a book about that topic alone. So, that's also why, as you mentioned before, the further reading page is so important, because there is so much more and there is so much more information. And if it's something that interests anyone out there, then this is a really fantastic start. What I would say is, I'm going to read it. and it's suitable for anyone. It's a children's book, but it's just put forward in the best way that you could be an adult. You could, like, anyone anywhere can read this book, learn something, take something from it, and, you know, yeah, really be enriched by it. So buy it, read it, whatever, borrow it from a library, do whatever, but get your hands on it for sure. And so I always end our interviews on the very same question as well. So what do you have any writing tips, or any tips in general? It could be to do with the topic of this book, it could be to do with your publishing journey, it could be anything, but do you have any tips out there for maybe young budding writers, or anyone that wants to follow in your footsteps? You know, you've had a very defined journey where you started in diversity, which I find absolutely fascinating. So do you have anything, any knowledge that you'd like to share with everyone out there watching?
Well, I just say that writing is not always easy. It's very, very solitary. You've got to do it on your own. And obviously, you can't watch TV or go out with friends. You have to make some sacrifices. But it's really worth it in the end when you see your book, and particularly if people appreciate it. And when people seem to understand what it is you're trying to do, that's really rewarding. So I would say, if you've got a book in you, you want to do it, just do it. It's not easy, but I'd say do it.
I mean, absolutely, yeah. But sometimes I always feel like if I'm writing something, whether it's at work or whatever, sometimes you just have this, you just feel it there, you know, it just comes out, and you have this like burst of creativity that just happens. And I think you're right. If you have that in you, if you have that desire, then do it. Just do it. In a very oversimplified manner, just do it. But I mean, yeah, thank you so much for your time, and for taking part in Lit in Colour, and for chatting with us today. The story of Afro Hair is out now everywhere, so I implore everyone to get your hands on a copy. Absolutely, you can order them online. You can, I believe they're being sold in bookstores, and yeah, you can check yourself out. Where can we find your work and keep up to date with you?
I would say my website, which is Golden Destiny, all one word, goldendestiny.co.uk. And I'm on Instagram as well as Twitter.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us. And yeah, have a great weekend.
Thank you, Luke. You too.
Yes. Bye.
Bye.